Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. And we don't like to do a lot of conflict on this show and get in people's faces, but I've got a headline here in the newspaper that I need some answers to. What the heck is this?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the editor.
This is Jake Day. He's a candidate for Salisbury City Mayor. Jake, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg.
So why are you doing this?
Why am I running for mayor?
Yes.
Or why am I here?
Why are you running for mayor?
Well, you know, I think my entire life I've known I wanted to be involved in making Salisbury a better place. Since I was a little kid, loved this town and wanted to help. 2.5 years ago, ran for city council, became council president. I have never, for a single moment of my life, had any interest in being a legislator. So it was a bit uncomfortable that I ended up in a legislative body. It just didn't make sense to me. That said, I think we've been able to do a lot. I think I've been able to do some things from that position. I've been pleased with the results of our work in council chambers. But I really want to give 100% to this city, and I think the mayor's position is the place to do that. I believe that Salisburyans want a government that they can believe in and inspire them and motivate them and engage them, and I know I'm capable of doing that.
Now, those of us who watch from the sidelines and don't have the guts to get down in the arena like that, we wondered how you were going to be in that legislative role, but you have really run those people, I think, in a very respectable way. You let them do their jobs, and you guys work as a team. Was that always easy? Is it easy?
No, it's not easy. But I think it's a requirement. And it's not just about disagreeing without being disagreeable. You hear that phrase from time to time. It's not just about smiling through things and patting each other on the shoulder a little rough and saying, yeah, we're a team, and grinning and bearing it. It is more about acknowledging the fact that every single person up there was elected into those jobs by the people of Salisbury, by the voters of Salisbury. So whatever it was, they saw the individual that has been elected to that position as one of the 5 best people to represent them, who put their name in the ring. So I think it was incumbent upon me to respect that, which is why you don't see me banging the gavel. And that's not to say that that tool shouldn't be used from time to time, but I think it's the council president's job to, 1, set the tone, and to 2, give everybody an opportunity to be heard and to ask their questions. And what I try to do with that as well is not just to do that as a token, not just to let people talk, so to speak, but to really ensure that the policy or the law or the resolution that we're discussing is going to reflect the concerns and considerations that the elected official is asking for on behalf of citizens who have given them information or asked them questions.
Right. And what I've also seen in that dynamic is you'll have colleagues who will start to talk, and they're on a tangent that you're not connected to, I can tell. And I think, all right, he's just going to let them say their piece, and then he'll move on. You know, that way they've said their thing. And I think you're not listening, but then later in the discussion, I'll hear you mention something that they mentioned, and it will help the argument all around, and it really is a productive thing. And I'm blown away by that, because I'm not used to that in local politics, either here at Salisbury or anywhere.
Well, thanks, Greg. I'm glad to know that it looks like I'm not paying attention.
No, you know what it is, because it's also a different dynamic. You guys have your laptops or whatever. You're not always looking at the crowd or looking at a paper agenda. There's something different going on.
Yeah.
At least, especially in your work sessions, where you're looking at the same agenda that I am. In my office if I'm watching it on PAC 14. So I'm participating the same way you are.
Right.
So, like as an example, when you all were talking about the riverfront, the walkway thing.
Riverwalk ordinance?
You're right, exactly. So anybody who makes improvements would have to conform to what's there. Mm-hmm. You were looking at the same map that I was, and it was very helpful to have that agenda. So I felt like I was part of the decision making. Any citizen can be doing the same thing.
Sure.
But it's sort of a different environment, and I just see you guys acting differently than councils previous to Salisbury or anywhere that I've ever seen.
Well, so two factors to that that differentiate us from other communities. The first being the change in kind of demeanor and consideration of my colleagues and my partners is I think I have a responsibility to ensure that the outcome is reflective of every reasonable request that a council member has. So sometimes that means, something that I might not think is important. I'm going to ask the administration my council, my fellow council members, and the proponent, whether that's in not the administration or a department, it could be a property owner. I'm going to ask them to consider that in the outcome. And often you'll hear me ask, can we or could we consider, allowing this and this? In my head constantly, it's kind of like a running process as we're talking about an issue. In my head, there's a constant kind of mediation of, okay, well, we've got that factor, can we do this? And sometimes it's even language. And so maybe the compromise language is this. And I look at my job as, I'll propose that
right
at some point in the process. The other factor is you're seeing our work sessions in the same place and behind the same table and in the same setting as our legislative sessions. And the reason that we thought that was important was because those used to happen in a conference room.
back in the little room, and it was always bad back there.
Yeah, and so...
Bad things happen back there.
Yes. Council Vice President Mitchell last night at our Coffee with Your Council session up at Faith Baptist Church was talking about what it used to be like. And she said that even, speaking for herself, I used to say things that I wouldn't say anymore in those work sessions. And it's good to be able to be candid, but it's better, I think, to be held to a standard that you're going to be professional and appropriate
right.
and focused
and productive
during those meetings. So now you get to see, although it may not be fun to watch a 4-hour work session, you get to see us ask all of our questions, debate the issue, try to find common ground, hear from citizens in a way that if you just watched our legislative sessions, you're not going to see. Because most of those decisions are getting made through the inquiry process that we have in the work sessions.
Right.
And in the legislative sessions, any questions, any comments, any concerns? Right. None? All right, drive forward.
Right. And it's not the first discussion on an issue by any means. You guys have usually talked about something 2 or 3 times.
Yes.
Well, always, before it gets to a vote type situation.
That's right.
Whereas the public who only came to the one meeting would think it was all brand new.
Right. And think we just aren't even asking questions.
Right. Like we're going to start charging $1 million for every alarm violation.
Everybody good? All
right. Right. We've never talked about this before.
Right.
So, yeah. All right. So here's the hard question that I have. Salisbury has the very strong mayor form of system. Mm-hmm. A long time ago, a lot of people tried to change that for a lot of reasons. You, if you're elected, would be walking into that strong mayor kind of system. Are you going to be able to respect the council?
I think so. I mean, look, I look at it as a team of 6 people and a team of 33,250 people. We have, I think, each a role and set of responsibilities. And it's not, 6 meaning we each get a vote. It's also 1 and 1. The mayor gets,
right.
has a decision-making authority, and the council has a decision-making authority. But you have to respect the individual as well. So I think whether it's, one of the new candidates who are out there, or whether it's, Mr. Heath or Ms. Mitchell or Mr. Spies or Ms. Shields, I'm going to look at each of those individuals and say, what are your priorities? We're going to talk about those things in public. We're going to set our goals in public. We're going to include the public in that process, and we're going to move forward from there. And I think, although I've got a long list of plans and a long list of things I want to see done, I think ultimately it represents a narrowing of focus, and we'll actually be more focused than we were. It sounds like a lot, the things that we want to accomplish, the things that we want to do. And I know 2.5 years ago we said, a lot of people said, wow, that's a lot. How are you going to accomplish that? Well, I don't intend to accomplish all of it in 1 year.
Right.
I intend to accomplish it over a long time span, maybe longer than I'll be in office. But I think recognizing that conversation of getting everybody on the same page and then starting to hone in and focus down will actually lead us to fewer public conflicts, that might end up in the paper, or, fewer disputes and debates. And I say that recognizing full well that, you don't always get to set the agenda of what you're going to discuss as an elected official. Sometimes, somebody else's priorities are going to come up. But if you can at least say, look, we said these are our priorities and this is what we're going to focus on. And as long as it's not a crisis or an emergency, that priority is going to have to come second.
Right.
I think we're going to be a more professional operation.
Harry Kelly used to say, I do what I do and the council does what they do. I'm the one who's showing leadership. There are people who are having a meeting.
Yeah.
He used to say it to me all the time when I was a kid. I used to just go, "Yeah, Mayor, yeah, you're right. Who cares what they're?" But they used to cause him all kinds of heartburn. So, how are you going to be different than that? I already can tell that you are, but talk to me how you would be different than that.
Um, you know, they're not just people having a meeting. I've been there. I think we showed leadership from the council table. I think at all turns, I have tried to remind the council, my council colleagues, and really all of us have at one time or another, I think, leaned in this direction, that our responsibility as council is, a check, a balance. It is we have fiduciary responsibility of approving the budget, watching the purse strings, so to speak. And we have a responsibility to ensure that when the administration asks for something and sets an agenda, that we are ensuring that the legal context that every single citizen of Salisbury and business in Salisbury has to face is either shifting in the right direction or is still a stable, logical place to live, work, play, invest. The difference in terms of the example you just gave, I think is I've seen it. I've done it. And I know that you're sitting at that table, and sure, there may be political motives at times. People may want to derail somebody's agenda or something like that. But I think if you are well informed, and if you're at that table and you feel well informed, and you feel as if you have an important role and a voice in the process, and that the administration who's driving the train, and they really are, it's the responsibility of the mayor to drive that train. If they are coming to you with a well thought out plan and process, things are so much easier. So my objective and my approach, and I think the way that I would be different from Mayor Kelly, you said?
Yeah, Harry Kelly from Ocean
City.
Yeah,
Harry Kelly. The difference in my approach would be early engagement, listening to their priorities, involving them in processes, especially things that were important to me early on, so that they were reflective of the values of the council members and the values of the mayor.
Yeah, Kelly's model, not to go on about this, but was to be the dynamic leader of Ocean City and the ambassador, and everyone would just follow him. He's going to be more popular than anybody on the council, so it didn't matter what the council was doing.
My question is, why can't you do both?
Well, but I've seen mayors try to be that way, who they thought they were more popular than the council, and they would trump every discussion or exercise or issue. But the council really is essential to whatever happens.
Yeah, of course they are, and I think a more magnanimous leader, approach will lead to more productive results. But I don't think that means you can't be a dynamic leader, and I think you can also be an engaging and inspiring leader. Look, as much as politics is, can be described as a popularity contest, right. I'm not interested in winning a popularity contest. Right. I'm interested in making Salisbury the best small city in America, and that's a wild aspiration to some, right. But I think it's within our grasp if we do the right things for 20 or 30 years.
Right. People in my business love to apply tags to political leaders. So as an example, Paul Martin, our great mayor for a long time, he was a growth and development guy. I mean, that's really what he cared most about, was growing Salisbury. Then you get someone like Barry Tillman's elected. She was much more in tune with what was going on in the neighborhoods. She would focus on that a lot. Our current mayor, Jim Ireton, is a neighborhood guy. What's the tag that we put on you? What are you?
I don't know. You tell me. Isn't that your question to answer first?
You're a bricks and mortar guy. You're a downtown guy. I mean,
that's fair.
The stuff that you have talked about in terms of the city growing from the center really inspires me. And how people see it driving around on Route 13, Salisbury Boulevard, what they see, what they interpret, and just how important the downtown is compared to stuff outside. I was someone who thought, yeah, they should move the library out to Beagle Park Drive. Get it the heck out of downtown. What's it doing downtown? But in 5 short years, I completely understand why the library is downtown and why that's essential. But as someone who lived here forever, I didn't get that. And you helped me learn that.
Well, good. I'm glad, because it is critical. And the story of economic development in cities around the country, the ones that we want to be like, is different than it was 20, 30 years ago. The cycle's reversed. firms aren't making their location decision based on who's giving them the best tax deal. They're looking for the best tax deal, of course. They're looking for the best incentive package, of course. They're always going to take whatever you're going to offer, and they're always going to consider that in their planning. But what they really want is to be where the talent already is or wants to be and wants to live. And the talent, young people, people younger than me, frankly, are making their location decisions based on where do I want to live, not where do I want to work.
Right.
Because they'll figure that out later. And I think there's probably a generational critique that could go on about that and say, get a job, and figure that out first. That's what I did. But I think another way of looking at it is, go back to your hometown, care about your care about the place you're from, care about the place you live, make it a better place. And that's one of the things that I want to compel my peers to do is come back to Salisbury. I was just at an event just a few moments ago, and the facilitator asked everyone to go around the room and talk about their story. And the person who started kind of set the stage, and everybody sort of, I was second, and everybody kind of repeated the same story. And I wouldn't have guessed that. And the story was, I moved back here in 2010 and did this and this and this. And I was like, okay, well, I moved back here in 2008 and, this and this and this for these reasons. And it was Chris Perdue was the one who started the story. And
who could live anywhere in the world that he wants to.
Oh, absolutely. You talked about his time in Manhattan and Los Angeles, working for marketing firms, and he lived in Silicon Valley, not Los Angeles, Silicon Valley, San Jose, and all you can think is, yeah, that person could have chosen anything, anywhere, and hasn't been handed anything, has been working from the bottom up in the company where he works.
Yeah.
So I think that is pretty telling, and that's the story I want to see more and more. But setting aside for a minute the people who we're asking to come back here, because if you look at the numbers of graduates, current students, and alumni at Salisbury University, about 8.5% come from Wicomico County and Salisbury. About 9% of alumni live in Wicomico County.
Right.
So there's a parallel. There's some sort of parallel there. The other 91%, we're losing. 91.5%, we're losing. So they're coming through here and not staying. So you think about 1,200 kids or so graduating from that university every year. We're not capturing them, or we historically haven't been capturing them, which means our message to them has not been compelling enough that you should be here when you graduate.
Right.
And for a community that has 3,000 job vacancies, we should be able to capture them. Right. So I don't think it's about the jobs. I think it's about the place, and I think we need to be pitching ourselves better. And what they really want is culture connected to place. They want Third Fridays, and they want First Saturdays, and they want Arts on the Plaza, and they want New Year's Eve ball drops, and they want restaurants and bars and music venues. Those are the things they want. And we can talk all day about how that's not traditional economic development. Well, no, it's not. It's today's economic development, and it's not specifically about the $10 an hour bartending job. It's not about the $4 an hour waiting job, waiting tables. It's truly about the amenity that's being created and the vibrancy that's being created for the people who are either starting their own business or eventually going to work for a Cadista or a Purdue or a Comtech.
So that amenity will benefit the neighborhoods. Is that the way to make things better in the neighborhoods? Because a lot of people I talk to say you just have to crack down on the slumlords, the landlords. The city has this new program where they're going to start actually bidding on properties and buying problem properties and trying to put them back in the system. I mean, talk about your neighborhood commitment a little bit.
Well, we have a variety. So will it benefit the neighborhood? Sure, it'll benefit the entire city. But we have a variety of programs that have been created over the last few years to address the neighborhoods. And my approach to the neighborhoods in terms of the tools are not that we need to create a lot of other government programs, but that we have some great partners that we need to maybe give better resources to. Salisbury Neighborhood Housing, Habitat for Humanity, and there are even some private folks who are interested in getting into the market of community redevelopment, home ownership creation. My objective is to increase home ownership in the city of Salisbury. if we could get that to even 50%, I think we would, 50% of the single family properties in Salisbury, I think we would have accomplished a lot. You think about the margin, and the margin is we've got about 12,000 homes in Salisbury, 13,000 homes in Salisbury. The 65% of the single family homes are rental. So if you get that 35% up to 50%, you're talking about 1,500 to 2,000 homes. That may not sound like a lot. I've look what I've just done. I've just reduced the problem to a very narrow set. But transitioning 1,500 to 2,000 homes that have been bought by investors and turned into rental properties into homeowner occupied is not an easy feat. So if we can start with the low-hanging fruit, we created the receivership program. If we could start with taking on the properties that have been foreclosed on and owe the city a lot of money and owe the county and have back taxes that are owed, I think we can start to pick off the low-hanging fruit, turn those properties into productive, stable properties in their neighborhood. We can begin to turn the tide. So it begins there. It's also about enforcement. A lot of the time that we've spent considering different legislation on our neighborhoods, we hear, well, why don't you enforce the laws in place? Well, part of the challenge that the current administration has had in doing that is not that it's not a priority for them. It's obviously a priority for Mayor Ireton and his administration. But part of the problem is resources.
The inspections are overwhelming.
And if you don't resource your priorities, you are destined to fail.
Yeah.
So if it's important to you, you got to get the resources out there. So we've created a new position this year. There was a new position created last year for code compliance. I'm also very interested in a different approach to neighborhood services and code compliance. And this is not a tested theory in the city of Salisbury. But if you look at what some other communities have done, is one, they're surgical in their approach. The city of Nashville has had a lot of success in being surgical in their approach and figuring out which houses in certain neighborhoods are having the greatest negative impact, focusing on them, focusing on acquiring and transitioning them. And that's part of what this new fund would do. It's all about acquisition, not about the city paying for rehab or anything like that. We want to acquire it and gift it to the SNHSs and the Habitats of the world, and maybe even the private developers that are willing to turn it into an owner-occupied structure and committed to turning it into an owner-occupied structure. I think that approach to partnership, recognizing what we're good at and what those partners are good at, and not trying to be all things at once and trying to do all things from the local government perspective. The third thing that I really am interested in doing is emphasizing that neighborhood services piece of the Neighborhood Services and Code Compliance Department, because the code compliance and code enforcement piece needs resources. But I also think that our civic institutions, our religious institutions in the community have shown in a few cases some very good examples of work that they can do on a block or a group of blocks, and to have a very effective impact in those neighborhoods with focused investment of time and resources. And sometimes that's as simple as saying, hey, knocking on the door, how can I help you today? What can I do for you today? And that sort of engagement. So I'm interested in the city figuring out how to take on that sort of engagement and being focused about it. There's another city, Lexington, Kentucky, that did a 5x5 program where they would take 5 blocks at a time and just engage it with these 5 city departments and saturate and focus. And those saturations are something that you've seen the city of Salisbury do, but the saturations that the city of Salisbury has done thus far have been first and foremost about citations.
Right.
And I'm not talking about necessarily a softer approach, but I am talking about a more customer service oriented approach. What do you need? What do you need from us? What can we do for you? We're going to saturate. We're going to help this neighborhood. And I think through that process, we'll also identify the places that don't want help and want to be a nuisance or are disinterested in being a positive influence in their neighborhood, and we'll work to fix those things. I'll tell you what, I also just think about, you asked about my approach to neighborhoods. I'd like to take what we just did in Newtown and think about how that can be a model for success in other neighborhoods. And of course, it's got to play out over a little bit of time. But we approved bed and breakfasts in that neighborhood. After the neighborhood said it was their top priority, it was their number one priority. We went to their dinner. I went to their dinner 2 years ago, and they said our top two priorities are, get us bed and breakfasts, allow us to open bed and breakfasts, and deal with the panhandler that's at the end of Isabella Street. And so we've done those two things. And from all that I hear from my friends in Newtown, the second problem is addressed for the time being. The bed and breakfast issue is an interesting one. One, because it's us restricting commerce and us restricting opportunity and flexibility. Good reasons behind being cautious about it.
One man's bread and breakfast is another man's flop house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even a bed and breakfast run appropriately could be a nuisance
Right.
to neighbors, right? So we've been careful and restrictive about the legislation, but it's a relatively low barrier to entry from the city standpoint, $60 to get a permit. I think you just have to manage it right. So I'm interested in seeing how that plays out. I had a citizen come to me at Coffee with Your Council last night and ask about neighborhood restaurant. I think we'd have to see about the neighborhood, and I think it would take time for us to get to that place. And I think the bed and breakfasts are probably step one, and we'd have to look at, is it the historic districts first, North Camden and Newtown with proximity to downtown, walkability, things like that are most appropriate. But you look at those places and you could see something like what I saw in Pittsburgh when I lived in Pittsburgh in 2006, 2007. There was, in the neighborhood, these little houses, big houses, nice houses, but, the ground floor was just a little restaurant. It was, like a bring your own wine sort of thing. And, it was very quiet. There were maybe 4 tables, 5 tables, and a family owned it, and they lived upstairs and they ran the restaurant downstairs. And the menu was unpredictable. It would change all the time. And, it would get rave reviews in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette or whatever. Is that right?
There's 2 papers, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's say the
Tribune
Post-Gazette.
and the Post-Gazette.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Tribune Review
to
and
my
the
friends
Post-Gazette.
at the Tribune, I apologize. That's the sort of idea that I think Salisbury could, embrace in time.
No, I never thought about that, but we went to Aiken, South Carolina years ago, and we stayed at a bed and breakfast, which I'm one of those people, you have to hold a gun to my head to get me to stay at a bed and breakfast. It's just someone's house. I'm not comfortable. The Econolodge is fine for me.
Me too.
But anyway, next to the bed and breakfast, these people had a home, and in the back there was like a little, like a converted garage, and it was a restaurant, and they cooked spaghetti back there, and it was great.
Nice.
But it never occurred to me that that's what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it works.
Yeah.
It worked in Pittsburgh. That was in the Shady Side neighborhood. It was a great neighborhood. It was a lot like Newtown. It looked a lot like Newtown. Thriving little place. And, if you know Pittsburgh, it's all about the neighborhoods. And if you know Salisbury, distinct neighborhoods. We have distinct, identifiable neighborhoods. And each has its own character, and I think each would have to make its own decision for that reason. And I'm a big proponent of localized decision making. I don't believe in middleman government, which is, one reason why, I think counties are challenging to work with from a municipal level, because nobody likes the middleman, right?
Right.
And individuals, and neighborhood associations probably don't like the city for that very same reason, because it's the middleman. Get out of our way so we can make things happen. So I believe in localized decision making. So I'd like to see more decisions being made at the neighborhood level and see them empowered to make more decisions over time, whether it's from a budgeting and a prioritization process all the way down to land use decisions.
All right, we're running out of time,
Okay.
but we're going to have you back as part of
Great.
the candidate thing once everyone has filed, because there's a period between the filing deadline and the election. So we'll be doing our candidates thing.
Good.
But just tell me, what's the reaction been to your filing, or have you actually filed yet?
I'll file today.
Okay.
I'll file
to
today.
your announcement,
Yeah.
the reaction to your
My
announcement.
papers are done.
And what have you learned since then? Has it done anything to help you decide how you're going to run this race, or what the issues you're going to focus on? The reaction.
The reaction's been really positive, and that's humbling, and you never know, but yeah, it's been, and I don't mind saying it's been 100% positive. It's been really good, and I think that just reinforces not to change your stride or anything like that. Do what you do and do what you've been doing and stay committed to your values, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay focused on my priorities that I've articulated for this community, and trying to take us to new heights.
He's Jake Day. He was to be your next mayor here in Salisbury, Maryland, and we wish him well.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it.
Greg Bassett from Salisbury Independent Newspaper, another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.